Jake Rourke stepped off the shuttle onto rust-colored soil, the wind of Draconis 9 brushing against his face like a whisper of something ancient. The planet wasn't just remote, it was forgotten. A scar on the Federation map. Dust coated the landing pad, the sky thick with ash clouds. And overhead, circling high like patient sentinels, were shadows with wings. A voice crackled through his earpiece. "Handler Rourke, report to Containment Dome 7. Don't be late. Dragons don't like to wait." It cut off with a static pop, and Jake smiled grimly. That was the only joke he'd heard in 3 hyperspace jumps. He passed under a steel arch, sensors scanning his bones and breath. The base felt less like a lab and more like a prison, a stark grid of concrete and carbon alloy, reinforced walls humming with defensive fields. Automated turrets tracked his movement even after clearance. "Welcome to Hell's Aviary," muttered a technician as Jake passed. He found Containment Dome 7 silent, save for the low thrumming of generators. Inside, a dome of transparent alloy stretched high above, enclosing a scorched landscape of synthetic rock, metallic sand, and burned-out trees. Scorch marks patterned the walls, some deliberate, some not. A dragon slept in the center. 12 feet long from snout to tail. Jet-black scales with veins of red glowing beneath like molten circuits. Wings folded like origami steel. Even asleep, its body radiated presence. Not rage. Not hunger. Something deeper, awareness. Jake stepped to the feeding terminal. A crate of nutrient cubes sat waiting. He opened it and paused. 1 dragon. Enough food for 10. He frowned. "Is this right?" "No," came a voice behind him. "But it's regulation." Jake turned. A tall woman in Federation blues leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Her badge read Lieutenant Eris Varn. Her eyes said she didn't care much for rules. Project Ember believes starvation sharpens instincts. Makes them meaner. Easier to control. Jake's jaw clenched. You starve them so they'll behave like monsters. That's the point. He turned back to the crate, grabbed 2 cubes, and walked to the drop chute. The dragon stirred, one eye cracking open, a slit pupil narrowing on him. Jake pressed the feed button. The chute hissed, the cubes tumbled down. The dragon didn't move. Jake watched. Waited. The cubes steamed slightly in the hot soil. Still nothing. The dragon just stared. "Come on," he muttered. "Eat. You need it." Then, slowly, it stood. Every movement was precise. It padded toward the food, stopped a foot away, and nudged 1 cube aside. The second it crushed under a claw. The first it pushed toward the wall. Jake blinked. "What the hell are you doing?" The dragon began scratching something into the scorched stone using its talon. Slow. Careful. A pattern. 2 lines. Then a symbol. Jake squinted. No, it wasn't a pattern. It was a letter. H. Another scratch. E. Jake staggered back. No way. The dragon stopped. Its eye locked onto his. There was no hunger there. No rage. Just a message. Help. That night, Jake lay awake in the handler's quarters, the word help burning behind his eyes like after-image fire. Dragons weren't supposed to write. They were engineered war beasts, part biological, part machine. Designed centuries ago to be loyal, aggressive, and dumb. He pulled out his portable slate and decrypted the restricted logs of Dome 7. His clearance wasn't high, but he'd cracked harder things on Luna. Within seconds, he was in. The truth was worse than he imagined. Project Ember had inherited the dragons from the war-era archives. What was once a behavioral control program had evolved into something cruel. The dragons' neural uplinks had been locked, suppressing higher cognition. Sedation wasn't for safety. It was for silencing. They had thought these creatures into silence. Jake sat in the dark for a long time. Then he whispered, "What are you?" Next morning, he returned to Dome 7 early. Earlier than orders required. The dragon was already waiting. Jake brought a different crate this time. Not just food, but something else. A chip, no larger than a thumb, hidden in a nutrient pack. A behavioral stimulus protocol override. He didn't know what it would do, maybe nothing. But maybe. He dropped the feed, stepped back, and waited. The dragon pawed at the hidden chip. Sniffed. Then swallowed the cube whole. It closed its eyes. And trembled. For a moment Jake thought he'd made a terrible mistake. But then, the dragon opened its mouth, not to roar, but to mimic a sound. A word. Rough. Croaky. But unmistakable. Jake. He stumbled back. No. No, no, no. The dragon didn't advance. It just sat. Wings tight. Body calm. Eyes glowing brighter now. It spoke again. A second word. Feed. Jake laughed, but it cracked into something closer to panic. Oh, I am so screwed. Behind him, the door hissed open. Commander Thorne entered, flanked by 2 guards. He was older than expected, with silver hair shaved to the scalp and a gaze like ice. He walked with a limp and spoke like he was always 10 words ahead of everyone else. Feeder Rourke, he said, without looking at the dragon. How's our monster? Jake swallowed. Alert. Responsive. That's not its job. It's supposed to be hungry and hostile. Not curious. Jake said nothing. Thorne stepped closer to the glass. Dragons make perfect weapons when they forget they were once something else. You forget that, we have a problem. He turned sharply. You just feed it. That's all. You don't talk to it. You don't listen to it. You don't think about it. You feed it. That's the job. Jake nodded, slow and measured. Yes, sir. But inside, the dragon's voice echoed in his memory. Jake. Feed. Help. He only had one job. But he had already broken it. The debrief room was colder than it needed to be. Jake sat stiffly in the steel chair, arms folded, trying not to look at the surveillance feed looping behind Commander Thorne. There it was again. Frame 0012. The dragon, Ashwing, as its internal tag read, pressing a nutrient cube to the wall. Scratching with one claw. Help. Over and over. Thorne paused the footage. What do you see, Rourke? Jake shrugged. A stress pattern. Might be mimicry. Might be insubordination. Thorne leaned forward. These creatures aren't pets. They're prototypes. They weren't built to communicate. If it's copying words, it's reacting to you. That's dangerous. Jake didn't respond. His hand gripped the chair beneath the table. Thorne exhaled slowly. We're planning a live field test. Controlled aggression assessment. Ashwing will be the subject. End of week. A test? Jake said carefully. She's not, it's not ready. She? Thorne's lips twitched. You've named it. How precious. Jake bit his tongue. He couldn't say what he wanted, not yet. Thorne stood. You're dismissed, feeder. And remember, no deviations from the feeding protocols. Or I'll have you reassigned to waste reclamation on Io. The door closed with a hiss behind him. Jake headed straight to maintenance level 3, past flickering lights and creaking floor grates. It was where old hardware came to die, and where no one asked questions. He met Eris Varn at the service console. You got the logs? She asked. Jake nodded and handed her a chip. Encrypted audio from the dome. It spoke my name. Twice. She slotted the chip. Static. Then the dragon's voice, hoarse but unmistakable. Jake. Feed. Help. Eris blinked. It's learning? No, Jake said. It's remembering. She stared at him. Jake explained. The original war dragons had limited neural autonomy, baseline decision-making, basic speech mimicry. But Project Ember didn't erase those capabilities. They suppressed them. With what? Neural dampening protocols embedded in the nutrient feed, coupled with suppressor nodes in their spinal cortex. So they're not dumb, she whispered. They've just been silenced. Jake nodded. And Thorn's using starvation not to discipline them, but to provoke a reaction. He wants blood for the cameras. Proof of loyalty through violence. Then why use you? She asked. Why bring in a handler with a reputation for compassion? Jake looked down. Because Thorn doesn't think empathy matters. He thinks I'll follow orders like everyone else. Feed the beasts. Watch them break. Eris folded her arms. And will you? Jake's voice was quiet. Not this time. Later that night, Jake sat in his quarters, eyes fixed on a black datapad. He was designing something that could get him court-martialed, or worse. Protocol Override 17A, Cognitive Awakening Sequence. A patch, built off archived Dominion code, designed to stimulate dormant neural pathways in sentient bioforms. Risky. The Federation had purged most copies, but he'd found fragments buried in old Zenobio studies. He embedded the patch in a soft-shell injector, small enough to fit in a nutrient cube. Untraceable unless you were looking for it. He uploaded the sequence. Command, deliver to Ashwing. Observe response. He didn't sleep. Morning. Back to Containment Dome 7. Jake stepped in. Ashwing was waiting, awake, still, her tail flicking slowly. He opened the crate and placed the modified cube into the feed tray. Hope you're hungry, he muttered. Ashwing approached, slower than before. She sniffed the cube. Her eyes, normally ember red, narrowed. She swallowed it whole, then froze. The change was subtle at first. She blinked. Twice. Wings shifted, then tightened. She moved to the center of the dome and curled up, breathing deep. Her scales pulsed with faint, synchronized light. Neural overlays. Active. Then her head lifted, slowly. She looked straight at Jake and tilted her head. And for the first time, she smiled. Jake almost dropped his tablet. She stood. Walked toward the barrier glass. Stopped just inches from him. Then she opened her mouth. You came back. It wasn't mimicry. It was broken speech. Deliberate. Real. Jake stepped forward, breath shallow. You remember me? From before. Training. Pain. Cold. She paused. But then, soft voice. Jake. His eyes burned. I'm sorry, he whispered. I didn't know. I didn't know what they did to you. Ashwing's pupils widened. They fear us. Break us. But, we are not gone. Jake leaned in. Then help me stop them. The dragon's voice dropped to a rumble. Soon. Alarms blared 3 hours later. Jake was in the mess when the sirens screamed. Red lights bathed the hall in emergency glow. He dropped his tray and sprinted to the control tower. Inside, chaos. Thorn stood at the center, staring at a live feed from Containment Dome 3. Not Ashwing's, but another dragon's, blue-scaled, massive, claws glowing. It was awake. Not aggressive. Just aware. Damn it, Thorn growled. Shut down its uplinks. Now. But sir, a tech stammered, we've lost manual override. Neural nodes unresponsive. It's rejecting the sedation. Jake swallowed hard. He hadn't done this. Ashwing had. She's waking the others, he whispered. Thorn turned sharply. What? Jake didn't flinch. You wanted aggression. You're about to get intelligence. Thorn's face darkened. You fed them something. What did you give them? Jake smiled faintly. A choice. Guards seized him, yanked his arms behind his back. Thorn stepped close. You've doomed yourself. And them. You think these monsters want freedom? They'll rip you apart the second they're loose. No, Jake said. They'll remember who treated them like monsters. And who didn't. Thorn's voice dropped. You're finished. Jake grinned. So is Project Ember. In the dome, Ashwing raised her head. Flames coiled gently from her nostrils. Another dragon moved beside her. Then another. They didn't roar. They waited. Because dragons don't forget. Jake sat in the cold brig, wrists bound, floor vibrating under his boots. Somewhere above, dragons were waking, truly waking. The tremors weren't from violence. Not yet. They were the rhythm of something ancient stretching after a long slumber. His door hissed open. Eris Varn stood there, holding a stun baton and a look that said she was already regretting what she was about to do. You've got 5 minutes before they trace this back to me, she said. Move. Jake blinked. Why? Because whatever you started, it's working. She dropped the cuffs coat on his wrist. They popped open. He rubbed the skin and stood fast. How bad is it? Eris turned, leading him down a maintenance tunnel. Containment protocols are failing one by one. The dragons aren't attacking, they're organizing. Coordinating. Dome 5's door was melted, not blasted. The metal was cut. Jake's heart pounded. Ashwing? She's leading them. They climbed a stairwell that shook with another tremor. The lights flickered. Then a low, rolling sound, not a roar, but a chant. A call. Jake looked up. They're not escaping. Eris met his eyes. No. They're rising. They emerged into the control tower's lower deck. Security officers scrambled, shouting over static-filled comms. Commander Thorn was gone, evacuated to the upper platform, no doubt. Jake darted to the emergency override console. What are you doing? Eris hissed. Broadcasting, Jake muttered. They'll shut down all external signals to bury this. I'm getting the truth out before that happens. He plugged in the hidden slate from his jacket, fingers flying. Screens lit up, recordings, audio logs, dragon speech patterns, neural scans, the word help burned into stone, evidence. One final command, upload to Colonial Network, priority relay. Status, sending. A countdown. 30 seconds. Jake turned. Buy me half a minute. Eris raised her baton, then marched to the nearest officer and started shouting about fire suppression failures in Dome 4. Behind her, Jake's screen blinked green. Transmission complete. Let's go, he said, grabbing a stun pistol from the wall and bolting down the west hall. Smoke drifted in thin tendrils as they reached Dome 7. The security lockdown was in place, thick, armored walls sealing off the habitat. From within, orange light pulsed. Dragons moved in silence behind the barrier, watching. Jake approached the glass. Ashwing, he whispered. She stepped forward, wings half spread, firelight tracing her outline. The other dragons fell still behind her. Jake placed his hand on the glass. Ashwing did the same, claw against palm. Not touching. Close. Then she turned, exhaled, and melted a vertical line through the containment seam. One controlled breath. The steel groaned and peeled. The dragons followed. Not in chaos. Not with fury. With purpose. By the time they reached the central tower, the base was a battlefield of restraint. Soldiers held their fire, confused by the lack of aggression. Dragons moved through corridors, freeing other creatures, avian hybrids, reptilian constructs, all blinking against the light like prisoners leaving a lifetime in the dark. And then the alarm changed. Not red. Not a breach. Black alert. Self-destruct protocol. Jake's blood ran cold. Eris checked her comm. Thorns locked down the escape ships. He's going to erase the site, kill everyone here. Jake didn't hesitate. Where is he? Observation Platform 1. He ran. Thorn stood on a circular dais, towering over the entire facility. Below, dragons circled like ships at sea. Firelight painted his face in bronze. He held a dead man's switch in one hand and a pulse pistol in the other. Feeder, he said without turning. Still not doing your job. Jake stepped forward, unarmed. It's over. Thorn laughed softly. No. It's finally beginning. I was right. The dragons are dangerous. Uncontrollable. And now I have proof. You provoked them. Tortured them. I revealed them. Jake's eyes didn't leave the detonator. You'll burn this planet to protect your lie? No. To protect humanity. Behind him, wings beat the air. Ashwing landed on the platform edge. Silent. Regal. Her gaze locked on Thorn. You wanted fire? Jake said. Then watch how it chooses. Ashwing stepped closer. Thorn raised his pistol. One more step. Jake lunged. They grappled. The pistol fired once, missing. The detonator clattered to the floor. Thorn elbowed Jake in the gut, brought the pistol down, but Ashwing's tail lashed out, sweeping him off his feet. He hit the platform edge, hard. The pulse pistol slid away. Thorn reached for the detonator. Ashwing's claw pinned his arm. He froze. She bent down, face inches from his. Her nostrils flared with heat, but her eyes didn't burn with rage. They burned with judgment. You wanted war, Jake said. But they chose mercy. Ashwing lifted her claw. Thorn staggered up, shaking. They'll turn on you eventually. Jake didn't answer. Ashwing did. No, she whispered. We remember. She spread her wings and launched into the sky. Thorn dropped to his knees. Jake picked up the detonator and crushed it underfoot. The next day, the dragons were gone. Not into hiding, into the wild skies above Draconis 9. Free. Self-governed. They didn't torch cities or storm bases. They vanished. Silently. Peacefully. Eris approached Jake at the base ruins, now quiet. You think they'll come back? Jake looked at the sky. When they want to be seen. Not before. 2 weeks later, Jake stood before the Galactic Tribunal. The footage had reached every corner of the network. There was no denying it now. The court ruled Project Ember dismantled. Commander Thorn stripped of rank. A new interspecies empathy charter was ratified, opening dialogue with any sentient non-human life. Jake declined the medal. He had one more place to visit. The moon was quiet. Verdant. Untouched. Jake walked to the clearing, boots soft in the grass. Ashwing stood there, watching. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Behind her, nestled in a warm patch of earth, was something round and gold. An egg. Jake smiled, eyes damp. I guess I really did feed the dragons. Ashwing rumbled in agreement. And for the first time in a century, the future of fire chose peace. The egg didn't crack for 21 days. Jake visited it every morning. No guards, no technicians, no fences, just a circle of stones where Ashwing had placed it beneath a towering duskbark tree. The golden shell shimmered like sunlit armor, breathing faint pulses of heat into the soil. Ashwing watched from a distance. Always present. Always silent. He didn't touch it. Didn't try to accelerate anything with scanners or biotech. This wasn't Federation science. This was something older. Something earned. On the 22nd day, Jake brought a journal. Paper, not digital, real, bound in leather. He opened it and began to write, his back against the tree. Entry 1. You don't know me yet. Maybe you never will. But you changed everything. Not by hatching. By existing. By day 30, the egg had begun to hum. It wasn't audible at first, more a vibration in Jake's ribs, a rhythm under his boots when he stood close. He checked the soil, warm, consistent. No seismic activity. No wind. Ashwing approached that evening, footsteps soft as feathers. She hears you, Jake said quietly. Ashwing nodded, slow, deliberate. She dreams. Jake blinked. She? Ash bloodline. First clutch since the war. Her gaze drifted to the stars. We do not make them easily. Jake hesitated. Will she be like you? No, Ashwing said. She will be better. That night, Jake couldn't sleep. He sat outside his pod under the open sky, stars scattered like spilled data across black velvet. A comet passed overhead. He didn't record it. Some things didn't need saving. He heard footsteps. Eris Varn. You really don't leave, do you? She asked, dropping beside him. Jake chuckled. Dragons don't care for Zoom calls. She tossed him a wrapped bar. Federation wants you back. Some kind of ambassador role. Fancy desk. More regulations. Jake bit into the ration and shook his head. Let them find someone else who hasn't smelled scorched iron and ash. Eris was quiet. Do you think it was a fluke? That they listened? Didn't fight? Jake looked toward the tree. The egg pulsed faint blue now. No. I think they were waiting for someone to notice they weren't monsters. And now? Eris asked. Jake smiled softly. Now they're free to choose. Day 39. Jake approached the nest at dawn, journal under one arm, fresh moss in the other. But he stopped short. Ashwing stood directly over the egg, wings curled inward. A deep, low sound echoed from her chest. Jake froze. What is it? The air had shifted, charged. Not with fear. With power. The egg shimmered silver now. The gold was gone. Cracks appeared, thin, branching veins like frost on glass. Ashwing spoke one word. Now. The egg burst open with a soft snap. Steam curled into the morning light. A tiny snout poked free. Then eyes. Large, violet. Luminous. Curious. Jake dropped to his knees. The hatchling uncurled, stretching delicate wings still slick with birth fluid. It sneezed, tiny fire flaring from its nostrils. Ashwing leaned down, touching her nose to the hatchlings. Jake stared in awe. She's perfect, he whispered. Ashwing turned her gaze to him. She is not ours alone. Jake's brow furrowed. What do you mean? Ashwing stepped aside. The hatchling stumbled forward, wobbly, unsteady, but fearless. It approached Jake, blinking slowly. Then, with a soft chirp, it climbed onto his lap and curled against his chest. Heat radiated from her body, but it didn't burn. Jake laughed, breathless. You've got to be kidding me. Ashwing watched. She chose. By week 12, they named her Jaren. She learned fast, far faster than Jake expected. By month 2, she responded to her name, tracked movement, mimicked sounds. But more than that, she listened. Jake taught her to trace shapes in the dirt. Letters. Symbols. Simple ones first. Then one day, she scratched a word without prompting. Home. Jake stared at the dirt for a long time. Jaren nuzzled his hand. The Federation came back eventually. Clean suits. Diplomatic smiles. Drones orbiting the sanctuary moon like mosquitoes in white armor. Jake met them at the outer landing field. No guns. No hostility. A woman stepped forward. Ambassador Hailey Inar. Cold, polished, efficient. We come in peace, she said, voice crisp. to establish relations. Jake glanced up. Aaron circled far overhead with 3 other younglings. Dragons born free. He folded his arms. We're not interested in being studied. NAR smiled. We'd like to offer partnership. Equal terms. Access to archives. A new era. Jake didn't answer. Ashwing landed behind him, silent and massive. NAR's aide swallowed audibly. Jake said quietly, "You don't get access. You get trust. And you have to earn it." The ambassador hesitated. "And if we don't?" Ashwing bared her teeth. Not a growl, just a show of memory. Jake said, "Then you'll go back to your ships. And you'll stay gone." By Aaron's first solstice, dragons from all over Draconis 9 had come to the sanctuary moon. They came in peace. No ceremony. Just presence. The air shimmered with light wings and shared flame. Sky alight with motion. Jake stood at the edge of the gathering. Eris stepped beside him. "Still don't want the title?" she asked. Jake grinned. "What, Dragonfather?" "Ambassador, you idiot." He looked at Aaron, now nearly full-sized, gliding through the clouds like poetry wrapped in wings. "No," he said. "Titles are for people who need to be noticed." That night, as stars blinked overhead, Jake sat by the tree again. Aaron settled beside him, her head in his lap. He opened the journal. Final entry. "You didn't save us. You reminded us we could be better. And that fire, when guided, warms more than it destroys. You were never a weapon. You were a mirror." He closed the book. And together, they watched the sky.